We're currently on day 2 of the Palworld versus Pokemon Cope cycle, and one of the amusing things about this is how people are trying to deflect. Like, Nintendo's going after them for patent violations, not copyright, which proves that Palworld didn't plagiarize anything, right? They are completely off base. They are being completely delusional. They are completely ignoring what Nintendo's statement actually says and are jumping to really wild conclusions, including manufacturing a narrative about what Nintendo is suing for, right? The narrative right now is that Nintendo is just patent trolling and they don't actually have patents. And like all the patents they do have were filed after Palworld came out and that they don't know what they're doing, which is complete and utter delusion. I cannot emphasize this enough. Palworld is completely and totally fucked, right? This is the thing that Palworld fans didn't want to admit and really needs to be talked about is that the plagiarism that Pocket Pair did was far more extensive than simply ripping off the designs of the Pokemon and simply ripping off like several core concepts, right? The narrative for that is that like, oh, Pokemon is so popular, it's become genericized, which is not true, and that will be demonstrated in court. But, and this is a big but, the plagiarism goes way, way deeper than that, right? The animations are the same. The way the game plays is the same, right? Nintendo is going to demonstrate through these patent violations that Palworld took a lot of their core mechanics from Pokemon Legends Arceus and placed them into Palworld, right? Even though the game has different gameplay aspects with like the crafting slot and the guns, all the critical aspects of Pokemon, the values of catching Pokemon, right? The mechanics used in Legends Arceus, like that stuff, those mechanics are patented. And that is going to be something that Nintendo demonstrates in their court case. And quite thoroughly, too. The fact that they like cited multiple patents is a very strong indication that they found a lot that was straight up ripped from their games. If anything, I would say the fact that they're going after patent violations is worse than simple copyrights, right? Because this shows that Nintendo is that the game was plagiarized at its core level, right? The code itself has been stolen, right? They have illicitly copied and pasted another IP and that they are going to reap the consequences of that, right? Pocket Pair is completely fucked. And right now, you have a lot of coping and seething about this, right? Everybody's kind of deflecting. They're trying to say that Nintendo has no case. But the reality is, like, this is like day 2, okay? The lawsuit has just been filed. Nintendo has just formally announced it's happening, right? Like, people were saying just a couple of days ago that this would never happen ever, right? I saw a video game Storytime change the title of their video. Like, Nintendo will never sue Palworld. Nintendo will never sue Palworld because of copyright. Like, it's a cope, essentially, is what we're seeing with these people. Like Clownfish TV, Verlicify, Raging Golden Eagle. All of these people are coming out defending a bootleg company purely because it's going to get them views on YouTube. And that is the only reason why anybody is defending Palworld is because they think they can turn this into an anti-Nintendo controversy. But I do think it's going to blow up in their faces in a really nasty way because I think people really, really underestimate just how much Palworld actually stole, right? This is the big thing, is that it goes beyond like what everybody saw from like the initial trailers, right? Like Nintendo is going to demonstrate all the patents that they violated. It's going to be clear as day. Palworld is not in a position to defend themselves in this regard. Oh, but they made $500 million reduce. Like, I don't think they made that much money. It's been squandered on different things. And I'm sure that like the legal costs of going up against Nintendo is just going to be too much for them to bear, right? It is going to implode upon itself, right? There is absolutely no way that Palworld is going to win this lawsuit. And again, the big thing that like people don't understand is that Nintendo is I don't see anybody talking about this. Nintendo is seeking an injunction against them, which means they specifically want Palworld to no longer be sold, right? It will not be allowed to be distributed. And we are, I would say, considering what we know, that like they are certainly going to get it, right? Palworld should not have been allowed to go up on Steam, right? They Xbox should never have enabled them. Sony never should have enabled them. Aniplex, Steam, like all these companies, like really should have stopped and said, this looks kind of like plagiarism. I suppose these corpos have gotten way too used to like ripping off Nintendo's ideas. Like they got so comfortable with it that they really thought they could like push their boundaries a little bit. But no, like this needs to stop. Like this is embarrassing. Like I've been saying this about like knockoff iPhone games too, and like fan games. Like this blatant use of Nintendo's intellectual property really needs to stop. Right? It's embarrassing. It's pathetic. Get your own ideas, right? Make your own game. But they're not capable of doing so because it will never be as popular or successful as what Nintendo puts out on their own platforms. And so that's why they feel the need to keep putting out these knockoff products. But now we're seeing that the situation's escalating, right? The lawsuit has been filed, and now we are going to see Nintendo systematically dismantle Palworld. They're going to take all their money. They're going to prevent them from doing business. They're going to make their name toxic in Japan, right? There will be no recovery for them. Even now, in the early days of this lawsuit, like everybody who's shilling for them is beginning to be called out by the wider community, right? It's getting to the point now where I really think that once Nintendo wins, and they will win, when Nintendo wins, everyone who advocated for Palworld is going to look like a raging lunatic, right? They are not going to have any credibility coming back from this, right? Especially with the release of games like Pokemon Legends ZA and like Gen 11, right? Are we on Gen 10 now, aren't we? Yeah, I keep losing track. Gen 10, right? With the release of the next generation of Pokemon, like who's going to remember Palworld at all? Like again, I really was shocked when Nintendo had that Pokemon Direct in March, right? This was like right after Palworld hype ended, right? I really thought that people would at least try to bring up Palworld, try to make it relevant again, try to talk about it, but there was nothing, right? Nobody brought up Palworld at all. Like, oh, it's going to be way better than Legends ZA will ever be. No, like nobody thinks that, nobody believes that, nobody in the actual audience cares about Palworld at all. The only people who get fired up about Palworld are terminally online weirdos who obsess over Nintendo games and try desperately to downplay them no matter what happens, right? This is essentially what we're seeing now, is just people unwilling to admit that Palworld, their big champion against Pokemon, is going to fail. And not in just like a mild, just sweeping under the rug way like Concord did. Now, this is much worse than that. This is going to shut down the entire company. People are going to get like fined for this. Like companies are going to be implicated. I bet Jeff Keighley is going to get involved somehow. Like we are in a situation where the big Pokemon killer of this generation has completely fallen on its face before the first year has even ended, right? This game never even left early access. And yet we're supposed to believe this was some phenomenal success for the company and it was some major deal. Like, this needs to be talked about, is that Palworld is a complete and abject failure.